गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। वणकम, pranam, sat sri akal, and jai hind. Today we are going to talk of China failing as a peaking power. Important and very important subject because so far हमने सुना है कि China is a rising power and a growing superpower and all that. But today we're going to talk of China failing as a peaking power, and with to talk about that हमारे साथ हैं मिस्टर एनसी बिपिंद्रा। दोबारा स्वागत है बिपिंद्रा जी गन्ना शॉट के ऊपर। और आप सब जानते हैं ये यूरेशियन टाइम्स के एडिटर हैं, राइट? At the outset, welcome your initial thoughts, and then we'll get into the subject.
Right, sir. This is actually a wonderful program that you're doing. This Gunner Shot, and you're focusing on the right topics every time that I've noticed. Rightly you pointed out just before our show started. You're talking about the climate change and the agriculture crisis that China faces. So these are, topics that not many people touch upon when they talk about China, and they are very critical topics. So one such topic is the topic that we are discussing today, which is
Yeah,
how China is failing as a peaking power. So I think China is failing on most fronts. That is quite visible, even if we track all the information that is coming out from China, even despite the iron wall that they talk about. Even their own state run media, they have a state control over in the entire media platform, all the platforms. But still, there are other independent agencies, independent news media organizations that are still functioning from there, which are basically from outside China. They put out a lot of information, and state media also sometimes they are forced to put out information.
yeah,
If you
I
look
agree
at
with you.
them, it's
You come to know
completely, you come to know what is really happening there.
what
Tidbits of information, if you gather, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, you just keep tracking those information, and you get
it'll come
the
out.
thing. And
Yeah,
my point when I wrote this thing about China failing as a peaking power was that I tracked a few areas where they are actually failing, which includes their own social issues, their own
yeah, we'll talk about
issues,
it.
issues relating to their their defense sector, the military expansion
Yeah,
issues,
we'll just
issues
talk about
relating to
it.
their economy. These are the
Yeah,
areas
I
where,
completely go with you because
yeah.
if you
So
keep tracking over a week, 10 days, 15 days, it comes out. The whole story comes out. It just
absolutely.
comes out like a 70 projection on TV, actually.
Yes, very right, sir. Absolutely.
ओके,
Yeah.
मैं सबको बताना चाहता हूँ मैंने ये प्रोग्राम क्यों रखा, राइट? और ये प्रोग्राम में हम दो बातें करेंगे, एक चाइना के बारे में और एक न्यूक्लियर इश्यूज के बारे में जो इंडिया और चाइना के साथ ताल्लुक रखता है। तो सबसे पहले बिपिंद्र जी ने ये आर्टिकल लिखा था, चाइना फेल्स एज अ पीकिंग पावर एज ट्रबल्स माउंट फॉर जी जिनपिंग एट यूएनएससी, बीआरआई एंड इंडो पैसिफिक। बहुत बड़ा कैनवस इन्होंने बताया, सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल, बेल्ट एंड रोड इनिशिएटिव और इंडो पैसिफिक के बारे में। ओके, दूसरा ये आर्टिकल इन्होंने लिखा है 20 years of India's nuclear doctrine, does Delhi need to reset its new policy with growing economic and military might? मेरी तरफ से ये दोनों चीज जो है ये थोड़ा इंटरकनेक्टेड। Main thing, of course, is China peaking. So, first and foremost, let's discuss before I get into the subject proper and say why. In fact, let me show this. He has given 5 reasons what will happen. When five issues which will happen as China peaks and fails. But then we'll get into this later. First and foremost, the question which I think we need to answer for ourselves is, why do you think China is peaked and why do you think it is failing?
So the reason why I think China has peaked is that the troubles that are mounting as far as China is concerned that are quite visible. There has been, I mean, 150 years of history that we track. So most of these great powers that have peaked, they face these troubles. They've always faced these troubles. That's the history that teaches these lessons to us. I've mentioned about Germany. So when they peaked, essentially in the early 20th century and in the mid 20th century, they have caused, they
Yeah,
have triggered
twice.
crisis. They have triggered crisis globally, which has resulted in two world wars that we have seen. Unfortunately for us, the peaking power has failed in both these wars. Unfortunately, we have been able to retrieve the nation's world peace. That this is essentially what is happening at this point in time with China also. They have peaked essentially on many of the fronts: economy, military might, diplomacy. They have peaked everywhere. There, all these efforts to gain friends in Asia and Europe and Africa is slowly unraveling. It's failing. So these are, pointers towards a failing China, and that is precisely why these are the reasons why I've argued that they have peaked, and obviously they are failing because all their efforts that they are doing right now is trying to keep up with the pressures that they are facing in all these fronts. They are trying to resolve those issues. That is what every peaking power that is failing does. They try to salvage situations which push them more into the abyss that they are already getting into. So this is what is happening. Since we are going to discuss each of these issues, I'm not elaborating on this point.
Yeah,
So
I understand.
that is my
Yeah,
point. This is essentially my point. History teaches us these pointers, and this is precisely what is happening with China on the economy front, on the military front, on the diplomacy front, on issues within China, the social front also, where we have seen a lot of people coming out and voicing their concerns on the various issues, at, local issues, domestic issues at various point in time. So these issues are very critical for China at this point in time. They are trying to do something, or Xi Jinping is trying his best to do something to salvage. And by doing that, he's actually getting China into more trouble on every front. So
yeah.
that's
And
the argument.
there's also commentary worldwide that when if as China goes down, it's going to pull the whole world down with it in terms of economy and all that. And
Exactly. I'm kind of arguing that these actions by China on their knee-jerk reactions to each of these complex issues is kind of pointing towards a World War III that is likely to happen vis-a-vis the power struggle that is happening in the world order at this point in time. So,
so
yeah,
you raised 2 3 points. You spoke on of a likely scenario for a third world war in some form, and
I'm talking about
global,
conventional war
yeah,
because the grave zone warfare is already happening.
already happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the gray zone warfare, which is an important point आपने जो बताया कि ये जो ग्रे जोन वॉरफेयर है ऑलरेडी शुरू हो गया है और ये पिछले 5 6 साल से शुरू हो गया और ये चलता रहेगा और एक तरीके से मैं आई गो विद यू एक वॉर तो चल ही रहा है यूक्रेन में
yeah,
और दूसरा वॉर कहीं और शुरू हो जाएगा तो वर्ल्ड वॉर हो ही जाएगा अगर आप इफ यू सी आई पुट इट इन पर्सपेक्टिव व्हाट यू हैव सेड if you see the history of the Second World War, it didn't happen in 1 year or 1 day or 1 month or 2 months. It happened over 4 5 years in different
exactly.
theaters with spurts and jerks. So if there's another war which happens somewhere else, so it's as good as a world war when if one of the great powers are involved. Okay, having said that, we'll get back to what you have written. Right. The first thing, oh, there's some, let me take it out once and I'll get back again. Yeah, now, okay. Right. Okay. You have said in your article, first, over the past 150 years, peaking powers, great powers, and you explained great powers that had been growing dramatically faster than the world average and then suffered a severe, prolonged slowdown. Usually don't fade away. Instead, they become bold and aggressive. So, first, we'll take this on and then we'll get to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier also. What happened in the World War before the World War One and World War Two? Germany was getting aggressive at each point. We know what happened with Hitler, opening several fronts in Europe, and then causing a crisis essentially, where every big nation at that point in time, great power, or rather rising powers at this point in time, entering into a war with Germany. The whole world saw a problem happening, a crisis happening, a threat to the world peace happening, and they jumped into the war to contain that particular peaking power. The same thing is happening with China at this point in time. So also, when I say that they don't go away quietly, they instead become bold and aggressive. We are seeing it on all these fronts. I have kind of explained each of these issues. Essentially, the lone wolf diplomacy,
Wolf
you know,
warrior diplomacy.
wolf warrior diplomacy that they indulge in. I can give you examples of what happened in the recent times with South Korea, where their ambassador created a crisis by commenting on South Korea's
Yeah,
diplomatic relations with China and blaming South Koreans for all the crises that were happening. So it didn't go down well with South Korea. They pulled him up, they called him, and they issued him a demarche, and they pulled him up and all that. So what happened again during the COVID crisis in Australia? In Australia, again, when Australia demanded an investigation into the COVID origins, China reacted so aggressively against them instead of being reasonable over Australia's demand for an investigation. Of course, they agreed to an independent investigation at a later point in time. But when Australia did demand an investigation in 2021, the reaction was aggressive. They said we will impose economic sanctions against you. There will be a crisis, economic crisis, diplomatic crisis between the two of us. All these things. So they made statements that triggered a diplomatic crisis between the two nations. And this you are witnessing everywhere. Now, what is happening in Europe in the recent times? In the recent times, when everybody is kind of withdrawing, the European nations are withdrawing from their economic ties with realizing the problem that China could impose on them. They are reacting quite aggressively. So
yeah,
that is one point. The other point is what is happening in South China Sea with the littorals. So again, their aggressive behavior is seen. Taiwan is a great example of how China has been triggering or forcing some kind of a military action by the world powers. And they don't go away quietly. They just don't fade away silently. These are all efforts to by Xi Jinping to address a crisis for the domestic audience essentially. So in that effort, he's actually committing more mistakes.
mistakes.
People
Yeah, and the
people credit him. People credit him with a lot of smartness and intelligence, but I think he's a little stupid in some manner. That is what I complete my argument in the thing, saying that whether China will realize its folly and make good friends world over, and become a good nation at that.
Yeah,
So that is where the crisis. And
okay.
I'm giving the example of India. How India has always been more friendly towards its neighbors, and how it's kind of going to help them when they are in crisis, like what happened in Sri Lanka when there was a economic crisis and debt crisis that they suffered. China just threw up their hands, but
Yeah,
India
throw their
voluntarily
hands.
went and helped them. So these are the sort of arguments that I'm talking about when I talk about both these not going quite silently and being very aggressive and
Bold.
wolf warrior diplomacy that they follow.
In fact, recently only they're also throwing water cannons at Philippines in the reef. So that's the
Yeah,
latest manifestation, of course, and and they've also threatened Europe, like you rightly said, on the de-risking and decoupling policies and things like
correct,
that.
correct.
Yeah, so they're becoming more bold and more aggressive, and as they go past their peak, this is being exhibited. Second, you said the peaking powers suppress dissent at home and abroad. So you'll have to amplify this for all our viewers. How
Absolutely.
is it? Yeah,
In the recent times, particularly post the COVID crisis that happened in China, we are seeing that the local people are getting much more open and aggressive in showing their apathy. I mean, their anger to the apathy of the Chinese government for their welfare. Particularly, this zero COVID policy of Xi Jinping and the lockdown that happened for a very prolonged period created a huge crisis for each and every individual in China. So those anger were exhibited by the people in some form or the other. We have seen protests in Beijing. We have seen protests in all other nook and corner of China in spurts, in different spurts. Of course, there is this very famous protest that became a kind of a fad among Chinese, was the A4 revolution. I'm
yeah,
sure your audience need to know what is A4 revolution. It's essentially they were showing a blank A4 size paper, putting it on their face, and then it's basically a symbolic protest where they want to say a lot of things, but they're leaving it unsaid. So this is the kind of message that they were giving, and a lot of people took to this protest, both on social media and even in physical protests that were happening. But what was the reaction of the Chinese? The Chinese Xi Jinping administration's reaction was to suppress it. They tried to blank out information regarding these kind of protests, and they were trying to attack people by arresting them. They're putting them behind bars and dispersing them in violent means. These were some of the reactions that the Xi Jinping government involved in. Even peaceful protests. I mean, all of them were peaceful protests. None of them were violent protesters. Despite that, the Xi Jinping administration went down on them, massively. So similarly, what happened with the Me Too movement in China? Me Too movement, we know that tennis star,
Peng Shuai.
Peng Shuai. So
Peng
Peng
Shuai.
Shuai was blaming a particular retired vice premier of the Chinese Communist Party, of indulging in sexual harassment against her, and she protested against it, and she was silenced. Her voice was silenced completely. They put her, in sort of a unannounced house arrest, and they kept her away from the media glare. And similarly, a lot of women activists in China are facing issues of this sort. So one of the activists, she faced a lot of cases against her by the administration. So they kind of bogged her down with a lot of criminal cases against her, and so that she doesn't. And the bargain was that if you keep silent, we will withdraw all these cases. This was the sort of threatening, gesture that the Xi Jinping administration indulged in. They were trying to silence them. Whereas now, what you see that slowly, I believe that these protests that are happening in spurts, they are gaining ground, and more people will come and start protesting, and there will be a revolution that starts from each and every corner of China against this repressive Chinese Xi Jinping government. So this is the sort of scenario that's emerging at this point in time.
I quite grow with you because I've always felt that it just takes a spark to ignite a revolution. And China is quite this thing. And plus, all these things like problems like, these floods or power cuts, which are now becoming endemic in China, and the problem of food, which is coming up, which Xi Jinping himself says problems of food, everything, could trigger any issue from taking off.
The latest protest, if you see, the social protest that is happening is regarding the medical reforms that the Xi Jinping brought out. So people are not at all happy with the kind of measures that the government is putting in, and they have started protesting against it. So what I mean to say is every action. I am also arguing in my article, Eurasian Times article, that the protests that are happening are essentially people are growing much more bolder in their expressing their views, and what is going to happen is this kind of protest is going to happen at every on every measure that is anti-people measure that the Xi Jinping government is going to initiate, because the economy is in doldrums. The economy is in doldrums. They're trying to rein in the economy by cutting down on costs. So this is going to trigger a lot of protests.
I agree with you. I mean, if you see across, say, the past 6-7 months, the protests are growing. The number of protests are growing. They might be small, but the number are growing. I feel the next protest could be the way they diverted water away from Beijing in these floods to other places. Right. Now people are struck with floods, but once that floods are recede, everything, they'll start their own dissatisfaction and all that. And that will come up. They'll come up in some form, and we can expect it. So I think you made a very valid point that we must expect more dissent from China, and that will create more unrest and more
Chinese people.
Social. Yeah, for the Chinese people, not for others, naturally. Right. The third thing which you made a point is that the peaking powers try to regain economic momentum by creating exclusive spheres of influence abroad. I think this needs a bit of explanation for people who for a better understanding.
Yeah. So this is regarding, I mean, what is happening at the moment and within China. If you see that the latest figures show that the manufacturing, sector is really in doldrums.
Down.
There, huh?
It's really
Pardon?
down.
Yeah, it's
It's really
really down.
down.
In fact, their factory activity has constricted, massively, and this is the fourth month. In July was the fourth month where it kind of went down drastically, and that is essentially indicating that a lot of people who went and the word global powers, which the global MNCs which went and manufactured in China, are withdrawing from China. So because of which the factory activity is coming down drastically, and this is a trend that is going to continue for a while. So similarly, if you look at the purchase index, power index of China, it's fell by 4.6%, and again in May compared to a year back. So similarly, this is the eighth straight fall, yearly fall that we see as far as the of this is concerned, and it's a very steep fall that has happened since 2016. So similarly, the consumer price index has risen, by just 0.2%, and this is again a comparative figure since a year ago. So this kind of these are all signs of this is particularly the CPI index is a clear sign of the fall in demand within the state, within the country, and this is all resulting in what is now called as the deflation effect. So what is deflation is that it's the opposite of inflation. Deflation is essentially the inflation is prices are growing, prices of consumer goods are growing, prices. Deflation is prices of consumer goods are falling. This essentially happens when there is a lesser demand in the market. So the people are not going out and spending money. When that happens, the prices fall drastically, and this is a crisis. People don't generally think that if the consumers are able to buy more with lesser price, then it is a great thing. But that is not so. This can also deflation also can also trigger a massive economic downfall within China. So when this is the domestic crisis that they are facing, what China is doing is that it's going and spending billions of money abroad
Outside.
to gain outside China to gain influence. The BRI project, the African infrastructure projects that they're doing. I'm not going into minute
Yeah,
details,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the overall picture is that they are spending money, billions and billions of money outside the country, and all of those nations are getting into a debt trap. So the money is not coming back actually. So they are pouring in money, but the money is not coming back in the form of the loans being returned. So this is a crisis that the economic crisis that the Chinese economy is currently facing at this point in time. So this is what I meant when I talk about spending money gain influence in outside China. So that's
Outside, yeah.
whereas the economic momentum is essentially bringing China down with
Yeah.
domestically.
एक्चुअली यू मेड अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट. आपने अच्छा पॉइंट बताया कि अंदर जो है ना चाइना में डिफ्लेशन हो रहा है, और डिफ्लेशन जो है कोई भी अर्थव्यवस्था या एनी इकोनॉमी से अगर आप बात कीजिए, वो बोलेगा जब अर्थव्यवस्था में डिफ्लेशन होता है, इट्स लाइक अ टायर पंचर, एंड इट्स लाइक अ
Yeah,
मैसिव टायर पंचर. वो इतना आसानी से नहीं होता. कोई भी अर्थव्यवस्था का स्पेशलिस्ट यही बोलेगा कि भाई डिफ्लेशन से डरते हैं, राइट.
yeah.
3 महीने पहले जब मैंने बात किया कि डिफ्लेशन के बारे में, सब कोई मेरे नो पीपल वर नॉट प्रिपेयर्ड टू लिसन टू मी. एक्चुअली द इंडिकेशन स्टार्टेड कमिंग आउट देन इटसेल्फ, बट नाउ ऑलमोस्ट एवरीवन इज टॉकिंग ऑफ डिफ्लेशन इन चाइना,
Yeah.
राइट. एंड पीपल आर वरीड बिकॉज डिफ्लेशन चाइना में हो गया तो बाकी ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी आल्सो इज गोइंग टू गेट फॉर डिफ्लेशन. So that is one of the reasons why people are trying to de-risk and decouple from China, so that
Absolutely.
they don't get affected by the deflation, and China doesn't pull everyone down.
Yeah.
And do you see an opportunity for this in for India in this?
Yes, absolutely. There is an opportunity there because every other MNC wants to have a
Now come here.
want to come here to India, which is very obvious now because a lot of things are happening already in the form of semiconductors and iPhone manufacturing. All that is shifted out of China and they've come to Vietnam is one destination, and the other destination is
Yeah.
India.
Vietnam has
So
only limited capacities. I
limited
think
capacity,
Vietnam
but whereas India, both geographically and in terms of its employable
scale and
youth,
size. Yeah.
yeah, scale and size, in those terms, India is quite a huge opportunity for the MNCs to
Outside.
come and manufacture in India. So it's not just an opportunity for India; it's an opportunity for, and the labor is quite
Others
cheap here. We have a great talent pool of engineers. We have great talent pool of software engineers. We have all that. We have people who learn quickly on the manufacturing process and all that. So establishing a facility in India is not, it's not not costly, and running a production house in India is not a costly thing. So obviously,
You
it's a
see
big
that. Yeah.
opportunity for.
So that's important. Right. Now, the third point which you made is the peaking powers. Or no, this we have said. The fourth point you said is they pour money into their militaries and use force to expand their influence. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So, so of course, Xi Jinping is pouring a whole lot of money. He's trying to build the most modern military system possible by
yeah,
2035, and he wants to be a world-class power by 2049, and use force to expand influence, which you already said. He's used force in the South China Sea, those artificial islands, and all those missile drills and firing against Vietnam. He's done all that.
yeah.
Do you see him going beyond this? That's the question.
Yes, I think there is a possibility, because the crisis that has happened domestically, he's trying to, you know, uh, become much greater than even Mao Zedong. So, so he wants to establish himself as the biggest leader the Communist Party has ever seen in China. So he wants to grow beyond the stature of Mao Zedong, and for that reason, he may show a bit of machismo tendencies by one possibility which I'm talking about is the Taiwan uh, invasion. So that is quite likely and possible uh, towards the fag end, I believe, of Xi Jinping's tenure. Uh, Now he's going to be there for a lifetime, so we need to see what is that fag end. But my assessment is that what is happening in Ukraine is a big lesson that the Chinese are taking away from there, in terms of how the major powers are not kind of getting militarily involved in a crisis like Ukraine, and not taking on China militarily. So if such a scenario, if when Xi Jinping assesses that the US and other big powers globally will not involve themselves in a Taiwanese conflict militarily, that is when diplomatically he will be able to handle it, but militarily he may not be able to handle it. So if that assessment happens, then I believe the Taiwanese invasion will happen. That's what I mean. Uh, that's what I believe is the answer to your question on
Yeah.
any
It's
military
it's
crisis.
not an answer to the question. It's more of a discussion. I mean, don't you think that besides Taiwan, he can also be doing something against India?
He's already doing it against India. That's why I didn't
No, no.
mention it.
In the
Actually,
sense, no.
what's happening?
What I'm saying,
Yeah,
what I'm he's doing against India. There's no doubt about it. On that, there's no doubt about it. I'm talking of something more strident,
yeah.
something more noticeable, or maybe he'll try to become more aggressive, or militarily more aggressive
Yes,
and
yes,
demonstrative.
absolutely. Probably he will do something like that with India too, and he probably will go much beyond what he has done in Eastern Ladakh. So Arunachal Pradesh is a big target. He hasn't done much on that front as of now. But Arunachal Pradesh is certainly a target. That is also my assessment. I didn't mention it
No,
because
no.
Eastern
Look,
Ladakh incident is already going on.
let me be
Crisis is
very
already going on.
let me be very this thing. See, your view is, I mean, I go with your view.
Yeah,
I'm trying to take views from everyone and put together a picture,
yeah,
right? So you're giving a view which is very valid, and
yeah.
I go with it. Because
Yes,
I've always felt that if you, more than Taiwan,
India
Xi
is a big,
Jinping
big.
is more focused to India. Reason, I'll give you the reason. You have to. The reason is, you see the history of past 10 years ever since Xi Jinping has taken over.
Yeah.
Has any military action against happened against Taiwan? Zero.
No, no, zero.
Except these missile drills which happened when Nancy
Yeah,
Pelosi came last year,
yeah.
and some issues of uh,
Crossing the midline
yeah,
with
right,
this Air
some
Force. Yeah,
Air Force violations and all that. But you
yeah.
look at it against India,
Hmm.
right from 2012, whether it is Tumor or Depsang or Demchok or Henley,
Exactly. Yeah,
and then to 2020 Galwan, you see the kind of action which has happened against India over the past 10 years. And
yeah.
this has happened every time Xi Jinping has met Modi,
Post
within
the
a
meeting.
month or two, close.
Correct.
Last time he met Modi on G20 in
Hmm.
Indonesia, immediately Yangtze happened.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
right? I'm very this thing. Now he's going to meet him in September in BRICS. Okay, something could
Yeah.
happen. We don't know. So I mean, I go with you.
I
So
think Arunachal Pradesh is where he's going to focus this time.
yeah, but the question which I mean, I want your opinion on this.
Why
He'll
I
do
say this
something?
is, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
why I'm saying this is that Arunachal Pradesh is a bigger stake for Xi Jinping than Ladakh.
Why?
So I that is because of the Tibet factor, of the Tibet
Okay.
factor. So because of the huge connections that the Tibetan Buddhism has with Arunachal Pradesh, is he is also sending a message to the Tibetan community outside the occupied territory of Tibet. So I believe that is where he's going to focus post the
Okay.
BRICS. Yeah,
Right. No. You made a look. You have a line of argument. We'll
yeah,
spend some
it's my
time on
line of
this.
argument. Yeah,
Your line of argument. I go. Your line of argument is that he'll focus on Arunachal Pradesh because Tawang has got historically connection with Tibetan Buddhism, and one of
yeah,
the Dalai Lamas was from there. That's a very valid argument which you have put across, and that it's a big message to the Tibetan people as a whole, and many things that he'll focus on Arunachal. Let me give you a competing alternative. The
yeah.
competing alternative is Eastern Ladakh, which
Hmm.
is already done, and he's not very happy with what he's done. Though he's there, he needs more. He needs more space. Why? Your DSDBO road, the
Hmm.
Darbuk Shore DBO road, which you have built,
Hmm.
which is now 3 years since that thing started. Now there's traffic flowing on it. It goes right up to Karakoram Pass. The other side of Karakoram Pass is your CPEC,
Yeah.
right? So it gives him a it's a problem for him.
Strategically important area is what you're
Yeah,
arguing.
it touches his sensitivity. That area of Xinjiang, one, it's in a problem. It's CPEC. Then you're looking at the Afghan factor there because Wakan
Hmm.
corridor. Then you're looking at the connectivity with all that. So this is one. This is one reason, which is probably a traditional reason which has happened.
Yeah.
The second point which came up, and which I got it just a couple of days back,
Hmm.
in my readings, is that with the climate change happening
Hmm.
and loss of permafrost in Tibet, and if the climate change goes up and Tibet heats up, a lot of that permafrost construction and their railways and all might have a problem. If that
Right.
problem happens, it's possible, then they have to come back and supply the entire forces in Ladakh only through Xinjiang.
Hmm.
The central route, the via Lhasa and Western Express Highway, and their oil pipelines and their rail route might be at a premium.
Yeah,
In which case, in
that's a
which
very
case,
interesting perspective. Yeah.
yeah, it's a interesting. You see, why I'm saying this is both these things are becoming more interesting. What
Hmm.
you have said is not less interesting. And what this thing is also becoming more interesting, because now he's got two issues at stake in Eastern Ladakh. One, he has to
Mhm.
sustain his forces there, probably through only one axis, the Xinjiang axis, which is
Mhm.
roundabout.
Mhm.
And the second is that your axis goes right up to Karakoram Pass.
Mhm.
So, um, I mean, I don't know which he's going to opt for and where
Which
he'll,
we will opt for, yes.
or he might just come in at Doklam again. That's a
Oh,
different
yes, yeah,
story.
that is also possible. But the thing is,
Uh,
why I said it is that you would want to open another front, just like what is happening in Eastern Ladakh, prolonged
yeah.
conflict.
So yeah.
So that is my argument. That's where
Yeah. No,
the
no. I
Arunachal
go with
Pradesh
you.
thing.
I look.
All these are possible. We are only
No, no.
discussing
Actually,
the issue.
what you have said, what
Mm,
you have said is
mm,
that overall, if you see and you club this with the chaos which is happening in Manipur, the overall threat level from China has increased. That's the point
yeah,
I'm trying to make.
yeah.
You agree with that?
So absolutely, I agree with that. Northeast is going to be another focus. That is
Focus.
where you're absolutely right. I'm taking off from the point that you
Yeah, yeah,
made.
yeah.
So there is already major crisis that's happening in Eastern Ladakh. Now we would want to open another
Other
crisis
front.
on the Northeast front for India. So
Yeah.
you have
Okay.
two
So
headaches actually to handle,
two
not just
headaches. Yeah. So
one.
he's
Yeah,
going to increase headaches. So if everyone talks of Taiwan, I don't believe them. That's my view. Taiwan is there where it is, and Taiwan probably might be an island too far. But I think he's got more payoffs with India, because if he can do something against India, there are reputational costs which he can impose on India. In which
correct.
case, his reputation goes up, and if his reputation goes up, his economy, everything. The third point which you said, I mean, let me go back to your point which you made,
Mm.
right?
But
Yeah,
sir, there is one thing that I had,
yeah, yeah.
Taiwan is much more a bigger stake in terms of Xi Jinping's own stature within the
Stature.
CCP. So that is what I believe. I mean, both these crises are possible. Both conflicts over Taiwan and the conflict over the
Yeah,
LAC are possible. He will do either of these to improve his own stature within the CCP.
the, and everything has got its risk and reward.
Correct, correct, correct.
Risk and reward principle
Risk
will
and
bring.
reward is there. So absolutely,
Right. Okay. So we'll talk of the fifth point now.
yes, sir.
This behavior commonly provokes great power tensions. So you're talking of the great power tension with USA alone?
Absolutely. Not just the USA. There are today when we talk of great power, of course, US and China, they are the two great powers at this point in time. But Russia cannot be discounted. I'm not meaning that Russia is going to have a crisis with China. What I mean to say is that Russia will be part of this great power tension that will happen, and most probably they will side with China. So that is a possibility. So India again is another emerging great power. India, where it will place its bet, is going to place its bet with the US. So when I talk about these great power tensions, I'm talking about the entire global great power tensions that are likely to happen. My argument is that this is likely to create a World War III kind of a scenario. So
Kind of
that's my
scenario. Yeah,
with two groups
opposite.
fighting against opposite groups, the the allies and the axis sort of a scenario likely to happen uh, because of these great power tensions that is happening at this point in time.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Now, considering all this, what you have said, the fact that China is peaking and probably going to start falling, in any case, its demography is going to fall very sharply. Just today, I read a report where they say that this year there's going to be only anything between 7 to 8 million babies only, as against 10 million who came last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, if you see the mathematics, it's very funny. If they're going to lose 2 million babies a year in the next 7 years, just take 7 years, they're
Mhm.
going to not have 14 million less people being born in
Yeah.
China. Add to that, about 8 to 10 million people will die also. So there's
Yes.
going to be, yeah, I mean, after
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
natural,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's natural. That's their death rate is 5 to 6%. In fact, 5 to 7% of their death rates.
Mm.
So you're going to have
Major demographic crisis also.
Yeah. So which means in the next 7 years, I'm talking only up to 2030, right? 7 years, if 5% go, you're looking at about 5% of 147 million. 5 into 7 is 30 million people, right? Plus this 20 million people. You're going to look at a major demographic fall by 2030, which is not.
Despite the population decreasing, rather this demographic trouble that they are in, the unemployment rate as of today is 5.2%.
Is
that's,
Yeah.
that's
So
adding to the
there's a
crisis.
yeah, it's adding to the crisis. Okay, now I want to switch from here. You've seen that, despite all this which is going wrong with China, and which was foreseen some time back. I've been talking about this for quite some time now,
Yeah.
right? Uh, you see, he's expanding his nuclear arsenal. His nuclear arsenal today is about 350. He wants to take it up to 1,000 and then go up to 1,500. He's talking of MIRVs. He's talking of hypersonic. He's talking of silos. He's talking of Reiki surveillance integration. He's talking of space XYZ. Okay. And since now we have spoken about the problems which he has with India, and you mentioned India as part of the great power contestation, and also India as an alternative to Taiwan. So in both cases, India is on the trigger, and this fellow is increasing his nuclear arsenal. What should India do? And you've written about this in this article. I want you to explain this to people, because people have, this article which you wrote, and you wrote very nicely. 20 years of India's nuclear doctrine. Does Delhi need to reset its nuke policy with growing economic and military might?
Yeah.
What are the issues? I've just given you one issue about China expanding its
So
thing.
in
What
fact,
else do you just-
in fact, what I've argued in this article is that exactly the crisis that you're talking about, exactly the issue that you're talking about, of a major threat right on our borders, both with Pakistan and China being nuclear weapon nations at this point in time. Of course, China is the one recognized by the NPT, but Pakistan is not. But despite that, it's a fact. It's a fact of life today that both are nuclear weapon states, and India lags behind both these nations in terms of the number of stockpiles that it has, the warhead stockpiles that it had. My argument is that if there is a crisis where both a two-front war happens and both these nations decide to teach India a lesson, and if there is a nuclear war at that point in time, India does not have the capability for a credible second strike. So that is one of my arguments that I've made. And precisely for this reason, that India needs to up its ante in terms of its nuclear doctrine, in terms of its nuclear posturing, and also in terms of it has to kind of reset its nuclear doctrine to say that preemptive strike is an option. No first strike use is redundant at this point in time after 20 years of this nuclear doctrine. So this no first strike was done in 2000, and later when they formalized it in 2003. The doctrine was formalized in 2003. It was done for a particular purpose, to do a benign posturing to the adverse reaction that India faced in terms of the global reaction that India was facing at that point in time. The sanction that situation has passed. So it passed too quickly actually when we signed the 2008 nuclear deal with the US. So considering that 20 years have passed, now the realities are very different. So, and two-front war and a two-front nuclear war is not some figment of imagination. It's a reality actually today.
Yeah, the threat is there.
The threat is there. The threat is there. So the threat scenario being there, you need to prepare yourself for that. You can't have just 125 nuclear warheads with you, whereas both China and Pakistan put together have more than 500 nuclear warheads at this point in time. So it's a mismatch. So you can't really do a second strike if simultaneously there are strikes by both Pakistan and China all over India in all big places. You can't have a second nuclear strike despite having a nuclear armed submarine out there in the sea. It's going to be kind of an impossible task. So when your entire nuclear command structure collapses after these strikes,
Then what do you do?
so then what do you do? So these are
Yeah.
the some of the so my argument is that you need to have the preemptive strike capability, and you when you see a threat possible, you need to strike preemptively. That's my argument.
Yeah,
It might sound very hawkish. It might sound very
no, no,
hawkish,
it's
but
not
it's
hawkish.
very pragmatic and a realistic, opinion of the situation.
Look, let me put it to you. Uh, why I brought this in? I mean, let me. Otherwise, I would have finished off with China and finished off. But the fact is that there is a connect between what you written about China
Yeah,
becoming more aggressive, its
yeah,
nuclear stockpile increasing X, Y, Z, and your own capabilities.
yeah.
Your own capabilities in the conventional domain are okay. You can match China and along the
Yeah, you
Himalayas,
can ward them off.
ward them off.
Yeah.
But how do you cater for this nuclear angle? Because especially because China is expanding, and one of the points which you made in your article is he's investing into his military, and his great investment into the military is nuclear.
Yeah,
And
the rocket
along
force.
with
Yeah.
nuclear, yeah, rocket force, his nuclear thing, silos, rocket force. He's investing in space. He's
Yeah.
investing in AI. He's investing in a Recce Strike integration complex,
Mhm.
right? And his doctrines talk of system of system operations with precision capability. That's his doctrine. That's
Correct.
his
Correct.
official PLA doctrine.
Mhm.
So what you said, that's why I picked it up. I said it's time that we started looking at the nuclear doctrine afresh, completely.
Yes.
In fact, I had a long chat on Gunner Shot only with General P.R. Kumar, who was our ex DGMO,
Mhm. Yes.
right? And we
You are
were
an
of the
artillery
opinion.
man, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I know. I look. Okay, uh, Bipindra, what you said is right. I can take the subject on single-handed, but
correct.
that doesn't matter. I mean,
You don't need me to discuss this
no,
issue.
no, 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 no,
But
no,
yeah.
not that way. But the fact is that when we discuss on this channel, I
Mhm.
want different views, different opinions, so that there's a consensual
Yeah.
opinion which forms. There's a larger opinion than a one-man, megaphone. I don't want to be a one-man megaphone.
Why I said this is that I'm not a military man, and especially I'm not an artillery man. I'm not a gunner.
Yeah,
Number
yeah,
one. Number two, I'm a civilian and a third party observer of issues.
all
So,
this,
but
yeah.
you are an expert on the subject, so
No, no,
I,
I
I want to
know, but
reiterate
that's
that.
okay. No, the point is that it's you see, if I alone speak, well, it's a one man's voice. But if more of us speak, a larger consensus has to build up, and a larger realization has to build up in this
Correct,
nation
correct.
that we have a problem. You have things said that nuclear doctrine, and you have also suggested in your article, which I find it very correct, that you need to increase your nuclear arsenal. You have to modernize your nuclear arsenal somewhere or the other. When
Absolutely.
you say increase, you don't have to go to 1,000, and you don't have to get into competition with
No, it's not
China.
about number. It's not a bean counting thing. It's
Yeah,
about
it's not a
capability.
bean count.
It's about
Capability.
capability.
Capability. So your capability in terms of your capability comes from your policy. It comes from your ability to
Command and control structure.
command and control, the ability to have your communications, etc., etc., your surveillance, communication, command, networking, and then of course
Intelligence.
you need, and then physical delivery means, and not only delivery means, you need the warheads also,
Correct.
and you need modern warheads,
Yeah, you
right?
need modern with the latest technologies that are available in
So
the
the
nuclear
entire
technology
lot
field.
you need to think, right? And I think what you said is absolutely right. I have no doubt about it. All right, but then, like I told you, the reason why because I saw your article along with this, I thought it was a very potent thing, and that's what I want to convey to everyone who's watching it. Right. At the same time, I would also like to put across to everyone, that it is not that we are going to be outmatched completely even at this present point of time. At this point of time, we are not. We are talking slightly into the future,
Yeah,
right? The Chinese capability, nuclear capability, will not change in the next 2 3 years. It's going to take more time, right? His Recce Strike integration is not fully complete. His missiles are not hypersonic all. And it's not affordable for any nation to have so many hypersonic and precision guided systems and all, because they have their own problems, which I'll tackle on a different day. And Pakistan is no front. Pakistan has its own front internally at this point of time. So they are in a different. We don't know where it will go, but the fact is, India has to cater for the worst case scenario, and that your argument is 100% on the mark. You have any other issues? We can talk. Otherwise, I'll take a few questions if you.
Yeah, we can take questions, sir. I think it's already
Yeah,
40
we'll
minutes.
take
We can take
questions.
questions.
Okay. At the outset, I'd like to thank Tibetan Monk and Lalit. Lalit is an old friend from New York. He's an investment banker who takes risk analysis globally, right? And we keep talking about how things are moving and all that, right? And I'd also like to thank Abhay and Visibly for your gracious contribution, which you've done directly. Thanks a lot. Right. Right. Now, let me take a few questions. Oh yeah, for everyone who's watching, I've started giving some books on strategy to all people who have come on Gunner Shot. Bipindra is smiling. Bipindra has said, "Sir, I'll not take your book unless you write one." So I owe him a book.
Yes. A book written by
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'll be written by
And
me.
on
I'll
China.
do that.
And on China.
Yeah, on China. Okay, done. I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. So there are a lot of questions. Okay. Vishwanathan says, "Sir, can I'll will go through the comments also quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more China tests its weapons, the more they can improve over time. Continuous testing allows them to refine their weaponry based on the feedback and insights they gather from their military. That's given. United States has enhanced its weapons platforms by continually using them and incorporating feedback received from its military. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Sir, can China not leverage its technical development by implementing a mid-course correction to address their current problem? Would What could their policy be to achieve this and its likely impact uh, on the global economy? A hypothetical situation. It's not a hypothetical situation, I might say,
Well,
Nathan.
they are already doing
Mr.
it.
Bindra has spoken of it. In the second half of that article, I would like you to highlight it. Please go ahead.
In fact, I do talk about this particular situation where I mean I no China can China not leverage its technological development by implementing a mid-course correction to address the current
By
problem.
realizing it, speaking that it
Yeah,
cannot,
I think
that's the
they
context in which you have second. Yeah,
yeah
the
they
second
may
half
not
of the article is.
yeah they may not have actually realized that they have already peaked and they are on a downslide, but they are seeing the indications and signals that are coming out of their economy, of their diplomatic efforts and all that, and they are making various efforts to handle this situation basically. So I am arguing that they have a lesson to learn from India. That's what I have argued in the thing, where say that they need to become benign great power, whereas they are not. So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they are
yeah.
not so they are not a benign great power at this point in time. So they need to do a course correction, mid-course correction, and then they need to make good friends everywhere. That is what I've argued. Technological development, what they are doing, they have grown technologically by borrowing or stealing technology from others, and they are also sending students outside abroad to the US and other European nations to study technology, come back and work on their existing whatever effort they are making, engineering efforts and technology efforts that they are making. So they are going to do this effort. They're going to continue with this effort for a very long time. But will it help them? That can happen only when they turn benign in their approaches towards the other nations that are there. Peaceful coexistence is where their future lies. If they don't agree to that, or if they don't adhere to that particular peaceful coexistence, I think the downfall is certain. because every
Yeah.
other nation has realized the threat that they pose at this point in time. So the entire world is currently now a major. I mean, I would say 9 out of 10 nations today are on or against China at this point in
China.
time. So that is the situation that they're facing, and they need to do a course correction and they need to become benign. That's my argument.
Yeah.
If they can't become one, then the downfall is certain.
Yeah, we consider CPEC as a failure because of no return on investment. Are we sure ROI is their intention? They're spending money to gain control over territory which used to be Indian civilization. Okay, leave the Indian civilization part. The fact what you're trying to make is that China could not be looking at ROI but more of control of territory and more control over Pakistan and things like that. Yeah, I think that's a valid argument
Yeah.
to some extent, right? Uh,
It is also
right.
their energy security concerns. So
Yes.
that is what is making them put in money in CPEC. So they are
CPEC.
essentially trying to, you know, save their ass.
Yeah.
As far as,
Say yeah.
pardon my
Okay.
language.
No, that's okay. A failing nation is more dangerous than a rising nation. China being dictatorial kind of nation with madmen like Xi heading it, he might be doing stupid things which could be okay. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. So from several presentation earlier, we need to handle China with caution as they have potential to create more problem. Taiwan would be a safe as they are compatriots. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. That's why there's all this talk
No,
about
I
China.
don't agree with that. I don't agree with that argument at all.
Yeah. Okay. So forget about Taiwan. As far as we are concerned, we have to be more careful. There's no doubt about it, and that's why all this knowledge and gyan about China we are trying to gain.
Yeah.
Okay. Continuous equipment refinement based on military feedback could aid the PLA in bridging this gap. Let us see where it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, China is overdeveloped, old, and with very less population in future. In any war, if we destroy their infrastructure to such large scale, ever imagine won't they be? They won't be able to recover. Your view?
These are all futuristic, hypothetical
Yeah,
scenarios. So we'll see how it goes.
we'll see how it
So
goes. I don't think that kind of a all-out war is gone out of the equation
yeah,
completely in the world. No, between two nuclear nations, which are two large nations, such war won't happen. Right, so don't worry about it. No first use policy is deterrence against China or Pak using their nuclear weapons. In case they actually decide to use nukes or deterrence policy fails, we can't take first attack. Need to preempt. That's what the argument
that's what
is.
that's what my
Yeah, his
argument is.
argument. That's what Bipendra's argument is. Demographic change reduction due to lesser birth and constant death in short term will also help China to take care of their energy food shortage. That works in China's factor. Uh,
I I don't agree with that because
yeah,
you have
I actually
less hands to work, even
work.
in the
Yeah,
agricultural
that's the
sector.
problem. Less hands to work, more old people to feed, and no babies. Oh, look, you just wait. Hold your horses till 16th, where I'll come out with statistics. It's actually quite startling. Okay, to an amateur like me, would not a solution be not only many more deliverable nuclear warheads, but also many more nuclear attack submarines with larger nuclear warheads? Uh,
Yeah, I
I'll
mean, I
answer
think
as a gunner.
yeah, yeah,
I'll answer as a gunner. As a gunner, the gunner's credo is that don't use big shells. One big bang is not good
enough.
enough. You need a lot of small bangs. The smaller bangs are more detrimental to thing. So the fact is, we need smaller warheads, which overall that gives you volume, and submarines is a option, which of course we have a triad. So where's the problem?
Yeah, so essentially, the attacks at submarines
Yeah,
don't carry nuclear warheads. That's just a clarification that I want to.
yeah. I mean, we'll leave it at that. We
The
don't want to
nuclear
get
armed
involved.
submarines are the ones which carry nuclear
Yeah.
warheads.
right? We'll not. I didn't want to go into that. And
Yeah, yeah.
my hunch, gut feeling is that they shall try to strike in Arunachal, use Muslim saboteurs to make mischief at Chicken Nest. Tawang is their target. I'm quite convinced. Malik ji, you will get 100 such options. Don't worry. Your hunch, my hunch, his hunch will all be three different, but all will be real.
Yeah. All of them are
Okay.
threats.
All are threats. You don't discount any till it happens. Sir, does nuclear arsenal be a deterrent only, or there is very much can
Very
be
much.
used in actual scenario where today really is global village and we are nomads? Yeah,
It depends on the nuclear doctrine itself that I'm asking to be reset. So
yeah,
whether it will be a deterrent or whether it will be a first use weapon is what the reset is all about.
yeah.
And of course,
Let's
the
see.
technological developments.
Yeah. So I believe Indo-China war is inevitable. If Chinese have to attack India, it should be sooner rather than later. Can China use Pak as a proxy to nuke India? It will be a win for China. Not so easy. Not so easy. Don't think Pak. देखिए यार पाकिस्तान में तो उनको तो they don't even have आटा की बोरी for tomorrow. So let not you think they'll go after nuke shook and all? They're not fools. Okay, so don't and for the next 3 years, I don't think China has the capacity to attack India. Let's be very clear about that also. There might be some chutput on the border and nothing more.
Yeah, minor
Right?
or minor
Yeah,
like what is
yeah,
happening in
yeah.
Eastern Ladakh.
Eastern Ladakh, nothing more. Okay.
Nothing more than that.
Okay. Right. Rohan Indra for the first time. He's yeah. Yeah. Is China ready for a conflict in Taiwan?
They are getting ready. That's what I
Not
would
yet
argue.
ready.
Not yet ready. They're getting ready, and I'm not a
Getting
general.
ready.
I'm civilian.
No, no, no. What you're saying is right. Your guess is as good as mine there. My feeling is also they're not you see, they're not ready on 2, 3 issues. It's not a matter of just going across. This is going to be the most complicated operation since the Normandy landings. The Normandy landings was just across 35 to 70 kilometer stretch of the English Channel. You know
Right.
that no, right? At Dover, the crossing is just about 25 kilometers.
Hmm.
Normandy is a little to the north, and maximum at the northern end of the Normandy landing was 70. No, southern end was about 35.
Yeah.
This is over 200 kilometers of amphibious crossing. It's not an easy thing.
It's not an easy thing. Yeah.
It's not an easy thing. It
They are
can't be hidden.
they are actually preparing through various exercises at this point in
No, no,
time.
they
But
can
that
do
is
all exercises, everything.
exercises. The actual thing is much more
It's
difficult,
more complicated, and
unrealistic. Yeah.
you're talking of China, which has never fought a war. It's never done an amphibious
Yeah.
operation.
In fact, yeah, that is very true.
Never done an amphibious operation.
Yeah.
Okay,
They have the most
so
inexperienced force.
yeah, yeah. Okay. There's a comment: India should not try and counter China on infrastructure. Most of what they build is economically unviable. What is the point of building a port in Park or railroad in? Yeah, that's okay. That's a view. That's fine. Uh, right. And then, is China ready for a? Yeah, this is
I think we
okay.
took
This
this.
is a good question. Right. Then is China developing tactical nuclear weapons? Any information on this? Because I don't have. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think China is in the game for tactical nuclear
They
weapons.
don't require it actually.
They don't require it, right? Tactical nuclear weapons is it's a cheap
You need
trick.
to tell them what is tactical nuclear weapons in the first place. Sir.
No, no, they know. The chap who's asked knows. So
Achha, okay.
tactical nuclear weapons are basically those which you fire from an artillery gun or this thing where you use it only against counterforce targets. Counterforce targets is you use a nuclear
The
weapon
battlefield.
in the battlefield against force. That means against enemy army, navy, or air force. Right? Counter value targets are those which you use against cities and value targets of the enemy or the target, like what the Americans did on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, so tactical nuclear weapons are a ball game. It's a completely different ball game. The problem with Himalayas is if you use tactical nuclear weapons, you might be stopping the war there only. Because you put a tactical nuclear warhead 20 kilometers
Then you
ahead
can't
of
move
you,
move ahead.
you can't move forward. You have finished the war there. You might kill a few Indians and all that, but that's the end of the war there. And if that's the end of the war, and once nuclear weapons are used, the see, remember, एक चीज सब भूल जाते हैं war के बारे में. Everything in China is political. They will go to war only if the political situation warrants so. If there has to be political reasons, the political outcomes have to be good. And
Yeah,
unless they are assured of victory, they will not go for war. Right?
absolutely. I
So
agree with you completely on that.
they
That is
will
what
not
I
end
argue also. Xi Jinping
uh,
will initiate a
thing only when
conflict,
he's sure of
military conflict. He is sure of victory, and which will
victory. And
ensure and his
and the
stature.
political objectives have to be met.
Absolutely.
Okay. And remember one thing more, history has shown many times when people have lost on the battlefield and won politically. The biggest example happened 2 years back. Taliban kept getting beaten all around in Afghanistan. Ultimately, they won politically and they threw Americans out. Okay. The Russians kept getting beaten thoroughly in the Second World War, and ultimately they beat the Germans. So people who lose end up winning. Okay, so don't think that China will just hit everything and then win. They might lose politically. That's the most important thing, right? And okay, uh, okay, yeah, this is something which I'll just please update us on any important infrastructure projects along China border. I'm aware of Zojila Tunnel, etc., Trans Arunachal Highway. Any others you believe are strategic import? Okay, I'll tell you this itself. Maybe I'll do this in October, November sometime because I have to speak to people in Leh. When I go to Leh, I'll get some inputs. After that, I'll come back and I'll do a presentation to everyone on what's happened in Leh. So that's how it is. We finished all the questions, Bipindra, and you have
Right, sir.
any takes on it? You any final comments? Then we'll close it.
Yeah, I think the next 3-4 years is going to be a real test of where China is heading. And I think the indicators at this point in time are that it's failing very badly, and Xi Jinping is not able to manage most of the issues that he need to be tackling. So, will this trigger a conflict, military conflict at that? Is what is a big concern globally, and I think that is what everybody is watching out for. As we rightly discussed today, Taiwan and India are the two likely conflict
Targets.
points. The likely conflict points that are likely that we can see at this point in time. So, on these two crises will trigger possibly the involvement of other great powers in this war, in this military conflict, and this could lead to a world
Yeah,
war situation. So that's my last
right.
final summary of what we discussed today.
Yeah, yeah. I think you made your point very clear, and I must ask you, I must compliment you both these articles, the clarity which you brought into the situation. You brought a new situation into the paradigm, which none of us have dared to speak. That is, we might end up in a global war, a World War III kind of a scenario, which we have to start looking. And the only way we avoid that scenario, because we have to avoid that, is to understand the whole situation better and keep your pulse on it. And that is why my focus on
And
China
prepare
and
ourselves to
prepare
prevent such a
accordingly.
situation.
Yeah, and part of this preparation of this thing is learn about China, see their moves, see what it is, analyze with different people, and put across things so that the people of our nation also start understanding China better. Unless we understand, the people understand, because at the end of the day, who's going to defeat China? It's not the military man alone, it's not the editor alone, it's not the government alone, it's the people of India who are to defeat
And the people of
the
China.
and yeah, right. So it's a people this thing. That's why I go this extra length to talk about China.
I have great
And
trust in the people of China, sir. They are not with the
yeah,
CCP. They are not
they are not with
part
the
of the Communist
CCP.
Party of
Yes,
China.
yeah. I think you made a very important point. The people of China are not today with the Communist Party of China. Slowly, that uh, fissure is starting to open. I think you made a very important point. Whereas on the other hand, the people of India are with the Indian government and think because we are completely democratically elected. We might have our differences. That's a different story. We might have different viewpoints. Like you, a lot of people have put on different viewpoints. We might have, but I think overall we are on a good track. Right. With this, I must thank you again, Bipindra, for this clear-headed enunciation of China, the nuclear issues, and everything. And I think we had a pretty interesting discussion. And I must thank all the viewers for all the questions which I put across. Yeah. So with this, thank you. Good evening and Jai Hind. Before I finally sign off, we're going to have some more interesting things coming up in the future. So just keep latching on to us. We're going to talk of Pakistan. We're going to talk of food security, global food security, and weaponization of food globally. And maybe next Sunday I'm going to talk of the Andaman Nicobar. I just spoke to the GeoCNC, ex-GeoCNC of Andaman Nicobar, CNC Andaman Nicobar. He said he'll talk us through about Andaman Nicobar. So next week is going to be interesting. Thanks and good evening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye. Jai Hind.
Bye, Jai Hind.